Are you wanting to raise your Catacombs level? Well, in this video, I'm going to be going through 3 tips that you can do very easily to maximize your Catacombs XP when you do a run. Now, I know what a lot of the comments in this video are going to say. Well, Gronky, if you want to raise dungeon Catacombs XP, it's very easy, just play dungeons. And yes, I actually agree with you. Ultimately, there's no real gimmick to grinding out dungeons, it's just going to be playing more and more dungeons. It's not like a skill like combat, where you have special techniques like you can farm ghosts or do revenants. It's just grinding out and sheer dungeons. So these are just going to be tips that you can do to maybe get faster runs or more XP per run. Just before we start the video, I kindly ask you to like the video and even subscribe if you want to. It really helps me out and I'd really appreciate it. Also, if you want to join my Discord server, we host 10 million coin giveaways very frequently, so if you want a chance to participate, then link is in the description. And with that out of the way, let's get into the video. So the first thing that I think that you should consider is what dungeon floor you play. Now you might instinctively think, well, just play the highest floor that you can. Well, there are a couple of scenarios where that may actually not be the case, and maybe playing like an easier floor, or even master mode over floor 7 or something like that, can actually be the better option. The first thing that I'm going to talk about is that the first 5 runs that you do per day gives you plus 40% experience. This is a really big boost, and it's definitely something that you should be taking advantage of. For instance, if you do 5 runs for 4 days, that is a lot better than just binging out on one day and just playing 20 runs. Now for this, although what I said at the beginning, you should just try and play the highest floor that gives the most Catacombs XP that you can get, because ultimately that 40% XP boost will apply to that base dungeon XP which you get from that floor. The second factor into choosing what dungeon floor you play is something that was introduced quite a while ago but is definitely still relevant, and that is the more times you run a floor. For instance, I sometimes do my F6 carries on the weekend, and then I find myself getting potentially double the amount of XP than the people I'm carrying, because I've done 400 F6 completions and they've done maybe 5 or something. And although this is capped and it's not endless, the boost that you get from doing more runs massively affects how much dungeon XP you get from each floor. And the relevance of this to what floor you play is that the higher floor you go, the lower that cap is and the lower that your maximum boost will be when playing that dungeon floor. Moving on to the third point, and this is the speed at which you can do your runs. For instance, when I run my F7 runs, I typically get around 60,000 XP per run. However, when I run at Master Mode Floor 1, I get around 30,000 XP. Now you might instantly think, well, F7 is just way better, why ever do M1? However, if you do an F7 run in 15 minutes, and you do an M1 run in 5 minutes, whilst that may be a little bit extreme, you actually find yourself getting 30 to 40,000 more Catacombs XP from doing an M1 rather than an F7. And whilst I'm not advocating that you should always do M1 over F7 because it's way better, that's not the case, because M1, the money making potential is a little bit bad. Ultimately, the point I'm trying to make here is that just because you get more XP from a dungeon run, the speed at which you can do it also greatly affects how much XP you're going to be getting per hour. Another thing to consider is that also you don't want to be running a floor which is just way too difficult, because ultimately this will slow down your runs, and also you're going to be dying so many times and it's going to lower your score a ton. And if you didn't know, the lower score you get, actually the less XP you get. I think all of these points together explain why choosing what dungeon floor you play and which one you decide to choose actually makes quite a big impact on maximizing your Catacombs XP. So next up, I'm just going to go through some miscellaneous items that you may want to boost your Catacombs XP. The first of which being the Catacombs Expert Ring. The Expert Ring actually increases your dungeon experience by 10%. 10%! Do you know how much that is? And although it's a little bit pricey, it's around 24 Wither Catalysts, which if you buy them at the right time, is probably going to set you back still around 28 to 30 million coins. However, I do seriously think the earlier you get this, the better it is, because a 10% boost is nothing to scoff at. The next thing I'm going to mention is the Hecatombs enchantment. This gives 1% Catacombs XP and 2% class XP when you fully max it out. This isn't as much, but it definitely still helps, considering they're still only around 1.8 mil, and the class XP and dungeon XP both combined in one enchantment is quite useful. The next two things are going to be more playstyle based, and what you do in the actual dungeon. The first thing is that you need to learn your secrets. Learning your secrets and getting the maximum score ultimately raises your rank, and the higher your rank is, as explained in the previous point, the more XP you are getting. However, on top of this, some players don't know, if you get more than enough secrets, you actually find yourself getting more XP. It's not a lot, but it's still helpful. However, if this has been changed, then just let me know in the comments, because I took this information from a forum post quite a long time ago. The second thing is a really simple thing, and just to make sure that you get Class Master in free. It's really not hard to do at all, and you should probably always be getting it anyway, but unless you're getting carried or something, then sometimes that can make an impact. But just know that if you're getting carried, or you're just not really doing much, then just make sure to get that class milestone, because you will get way less Catacombs XP than you should do. And with that, let's move on to the third point. And finally, I'm just going to be mentioning some last points that you can do to just maximize how much XP you get per run. The first thing, I know it's sort of like a meme now, but you actually should really try and focus on removing as much downtime as possible. I know my streams are not the best example of this because I just spend loads of time just waffling around. If you're in a party or even a perm party, then you should try to minimize your downtime. The same goes for when you're actually in the run. You should focus on getting the fastest clears as possible and also the fastest bosses as well. A good tip to increase the speed of the clears is that you should just clear the dungeon first and then go out to the corners and then work your way back in the secrets. Another thing to increase the speed of your runs is that you should also communicate what team is doing what. Like, don't be that party which has 3 mages blood rushing. I can make a whole video about increasing the speed of your dungeons, but that's just the only thing I'm going to mention. Just try and remember it and keep it in the back of your mind, because ultimately it will increase your dungeon XP per hour. The next thing I want to mention is that you should just try and focus on getting S+ runs. Just try to minimize dying and getting all your secrets and clearing all the rooms. And if you have a competent tank and a competent team, it's not ultimately going to be too hard. S+ runs not only increase your Catacombs XP, but also give you better loot, and also fill up your RNGesus meter for that sweet Necron sandal.
Nice.
And finally, the last point is that you should always take advantage of like dungeon modifiers that come around, are seasonal, and they come around once in a while. These include things like pull, derpy, and sometimes, you know when they close dungeons down for like 2 weeks? No comment, never happened before. They sometimes give like a little XP bonus at the end of it. So currently, dungeons have a 10% XP boost, although when you're watching this in the future, this might not be there anymore. And likewise, previously, when Skyblock was down for a bit, they had like a 50% XP boost, I think it was. It may have actually even been more. But they sometimes do these things quite regularly, so just take advantage of them, and especially Paul, he comes around a lot because he's a really popular mayor. And with that, those are my tips for maximizing your dungeon XP and getting a high Catacombs level. If you enjoyed it or found the video useful at all, then as always, please leave a like and subscribe if you're extra cool. And with that, thank you for watching this video and hope you enjoy the rest of your day.